Hey everybody, P.J. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show, coming at you straight from the tent studio. And I thought you would love our guest today. Now listen, all the shows, for the most part, there are some exceptions, but all the shows are also available live on either our Facebook channel, go to the Break It Down show channel on Facebook, or my personal or John's personal, depending on who hosts it. You can always grab the shows there, or also YouTube on my Pete A. Turner channel. Type in Pete A. Turner on YouTube, and you're going to find the channel there. All the lives are there, but also all the podcast versions. So wherever you're listening, thank you all so much for doing that. Our guest today is Aries Spears. Now, look, Aries is a longtime comedian, a longtime friend of Jay Mohr, and you know we're Jay Mohr's little brother in terms of podcasts and everything else. You've seen Aries on MadTV, Jerry McGuire, and most importantly, he's going to be at the Helium Comedy Club in Indy. Yes, it's open. They're starting to do comedy on the road. He's got a couple of events coming up here in LA in the Southern California area. So comedians are getting back out. They're starting to figure out how to do these things live, and we're kind of getting it. So I know that you're going to dig what Aries has to say. He was actually on Vlad's show. So you want to get a lot of background on him, go to Vlad's show. If you don't know who Vlad is, all you got to do is type in Vlad. He's got a huge podcast. And so we don't cover a lot of that ground, but we kind of just get into the basics of, well, first off, we start off with him and Jay and what it means to be a professional, be comfortable with your audience, and that you know what you're doing. And I know you guys will dig that. Okay, a couple quick notes. One, Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. Go there, put in a small donation, whether it's monthly or recurring, either way, or both. Hey, whatever. You can also donate your time, your effort. Like you could say, hey, Save the Brave, what kind of errands can I run for you guys? What kind of emails can I write? What can I do for you? Can I pick someone up from the airport? How can I help? It doesn't have to just be money. It can be actions. It can be property. You can donate a boat. You can donate stock. You can donate whatever it is. So think about how you might contribute to your community, whether it's to Save the Brave or some other way. One other thing, again, thank you all so much for supporting the show. It's getting bigger. It's getting better. It continues to grow. I love it. Look, we don't have a big marketing department. You guys know that. It's pretty much me and Damian and Scott and John. We all kind of do our own little bit, but you guys make a big difference when you share the show, when you tell your friends about the show. That really helps. Every now and then, throw a post up and say, hey, check out the Break It Down show. This is a good one. That would mean a lot to us over here and help us to continue to push the needle and grow the show even more. All right, enough of that. Here comes your man. Go see him in Indiana, Aries Spears.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Mohr.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, yo, how you doing? This is Aries Spears, and you are watching the Break It Down podcast.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
You gotta love it, man. Our roots are in comedy. When we started this thing, we listened to a whole lot of, I don't know if you know Mick Betancourt, but we listened to a whole lot of Mick's show. And Jay Mohr is like our podcast daddy. Like like so many comedians, you know. He got into it early. He helped Ryan Sickler launch his podcast. I mean, he did so many great things. And I guess you guys have history from being in the Jerry McGuire film together.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. Since Jerry McGuire, I hadn't seen Jay in, I guess, what felt like forever. And then we just so happened to be on the same flight, headed to the same city to do two different gigs. And, you know, he said something to me, and I was glad he did, because I wanted to say something to him, but I was a little apprehensive. And I told Jay this when I did his podcast. You know, listen, when you're young and you're in Hollywood and you're full of vigor and a certain amount of naivete, and you certainly are achieving success in film and TV, and you get some money, you know, you come with a little bit of arrogance and attitude, and you're not humble yet. And it's hard to be in those circumstances. And Jay, being from New York like myself, was always kind of that guy. And I was always that guy. And we were always like two alpha males from New York who, while humble, also let you know we were in the room. And he actually worked on MadTV in a skit that we did called Seven Buddy Cops, where he did a phenomenal Chris Penn. And I always tip my hat to people who do impressions that are not like everybody you'd expect. So I'm saying all that to say, I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for Jay. And he let me know it, vice versa, him for me. But I think we were both at a point in our lives when we were young where we weren't willing to share the ball if we were both on the same team. So, but I think because we're older now and Hollywood will humble you as well as life, we found ourselves in a unique place at the same time where we finally looked at each other and without having really to say it, we both knew we were different people. So when he invited me on to do his podcast, which to this day is one of the most fun times I've ever had doing somebody's podcast, it was just a blast, man. And I was glad that he came to me and said something because, again, I wanted to say something to him, but it was awkward for me, and I didn't know if I should or shouldn't, but it was for the best.
Yeah, man, I get that a lot. And we kind of hear that sentiment in general from like the I will say the Hollywood creative types where you don't want to bother someone else. Maybe they're writers and they're more introverted, but when you do reach out, you have that chance to collaborate. And also to realize that you guys are both, you're in the same trade, but your audiences are not the same people. Like your true diehards are not going to be, they might swap over, but like your people are your people and you've already grabbed them, in your career. And he's in the same way, like you might play the same rooms even, but the people that are going to come buy Aries Spears tickets, buy it because you're here on the wedge and then he's here. There's some overlap, but you can't know that when you're young. You want everybody to be your fan. And that's just not possible.
Yeah, you want to be the biggest, baddest guy in the room. Before I even say what I'm about to say next, I want to make sure I'm not crossing any lines here. As far as language goes, is there any restrictions here?
Yeah, you say whatever you want, man. It's all right.
So you want to have the biggest dick in the room. And as a black dude, I'll be damned if I let a white boy outshine me. Even though stereotypically, I'm not one of the ones that live up to the rumor. But fuck it, I'm not going to be the one to fuck that up. So it was good. Like I said, it was good seeing Jay years later, a couple pounds heavier. Same for me. Because it just put us where we needed to be for that to happen at that moment.
I love it, man. I love it. I love that, the podcast world, the community that we're all part of, whether it's podcast or comedy, it's just so small, like we just, in an instant, you can be sitting in front of somebody else and find out, 3 or 4 of the same people. And we find this all the time, but because I keep the show kind of like Jay, I don't really go, we're just doing comedy. We'll do authors and all kinds of other people. And you realize just how small, like it's not 7 degrees, it's 3 degrees of separation once you really get out there.
I think it's small in the sense of the people that are good. It's a big ocean, this podcast thing. And I almost look at it like Studio 54. Everybody ain't worthy of getting past the velvet rope. And the guys that are, meaning the guys that are good and worthy of listening to, I think that's a small community. But I think the market has become so oversaturated with everybody trying to get a piece of the pie that it's kind of diluted the product.
No, I got to agree with that. And by the way, you were on Vlad's podcast, and I'm going to sort of use that as a part 1 because Vlad's got a great show. He's got tons of listeners. And so if you all are interested in more of like the things that Aries talked on that show, go there. We're going to cover other stuff here for sure. And by the way, scrolling across the bottom of the screen for those of you watching on video is his next gig, September 11th through 14th in Indianapolis, Indiana. You can get tickets at the website below. I'll put all this stuff in the show notes and get this out before that event so you guys can go. And we have a lot of people in Indy that watch us. One of my best friends just called me. He goes to Indiana U. So we have a lot of people out there. You guys should support Aries and what he does. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast and what you guys do, because you've been at it for quite a while. I was listening to some of this stuff, some of your mail shows that you've been doing about, mailing the stuff you get inbound that you're going back out. But talk a little bit about what you and Steinberg are doing together.
Well, the podcast is called Spears and Steinberg, AKA the Jew and the Jerk. And, listen, we understand that we live in such a ridiculous cancer culture and such an over-the-top, politically correct society that we wanted to, especially from my standpoint, wanted to be the anti that, because it's like, look, I get it. These are sensitive times. While you do want to be sensitive to people's feelings, you also have to realize what it is we're doing here. At the end of the day, this is entertainment. And like any other form of entertainment, like a movie or a television show, a lot of it's based in truth, but a lot of it's based in fantasy. You have to keep in perspective that this is about being entertained. And at the end of the day, this is America. I should be able to voice how I feel as long as my feelings don't infringe upon your rights, as long as what I feel is not physically hurting you, as long as what I say is not violent, hateful rhetoric. We all have opinions, and this is America, goddammit. And we've always prided ourselves on being able to be who we are and what we are and say how we feel. And, again, as long as nobody's getting hurt, fuck your feelings.
Yeah.
I almost look at it like the prohibition era. Drinking alcohol, even though you want to do it responsibly, if done responsibly, drinking alcohol is fun. It puts down your inhibition. It lets loose your inhibitions and makes you put your guard down and makes people have a good time. And nobody wants to be told how to have a good time. Nobody wants to be told, you can't tell me how I'm supposed to enjoy myself. So as long as we're doing it responsibly, let people drink. Let people say what they want to say, feel what they want to feel. So I hope that people tune into our show to live vicariously through us if that's how you feel.
You've hit on a key theme for the show is, a good time, trying to find a good time. And we have a lot of musicians on, and they are the fomenters of a good time. You put a little alcohol.
Oh, absolutely.
Or some other kind of substance. Our favorite kind of musicians are the ones that sing you into some girl or dudes or whatever you want pants. Like singers that get you laid.
Let me tell you something. I posed a question on Instagram where I said, if you could only pick one form of entertainment to have for the rest of your life and only one, which would you choose, music or comedy? And it's a tough one.
Yeah.
And I just remind people before you answer, remember, you cannot fuck to jokes. I mean, you can try, but your rhythm is going to be off, especially if you fuck into the theme of Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld. Music is the soundtrack to people's lives, man. But comedy, who wants to live without humor?
Right. Yeah.
So both will get you laid. One has a better rhythm to it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And actually, I want to ask you a question about comedy. I mean, look, you've earned it. You've done it all. Are comedians ever satisfied? Like, do you guys have a slow down gear, or do you always strive to try comedy in another way? Like, because maybe it's acting, maybe it's doing, live event, whatever it is. Are you guys ever satisfied? Do you ever go, yeah, this is as good as I need to be?
No, I mean, I don't think the good ones are ever satisfied. I mean, as great as Robert De Niro is, or Al Pacino, or Denzel Washington, or Jack Nicholson is, you look at the icons, Meryl Streep. Do you ever look at them and think, I'm done. I don't need to get any better. I'm maxed out.
Right.
They're always looking for the next challenge in terms of how to get better. But the one thing I will tell you is, as you get better, you do slow down. But when I say slow down, I mean in a sense, like, let me put it in music terms, like jazz music.
Yep.
Like when I go back and I look at the earlier episodes of Def Comedy Jam, when I look at myself, Bill Bellamy, D.L. Hewley, Eddie Griffin, all the well-respected veterans that have established themselves. Early in your career, you're so energetic and you're so nervous that you have these recognizable tics where you say certain things 1,000 times. You move a certain way on stage. But when you get older and you let the game come to you, you slow down and you're like John Coltrane, you're like Miles Davis.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to rush. Just take your time. And the same excellence will flow through you, maybe even at the same pace, but just there's an ease about you and how you deliver it versus when you were younger, you try to fuck like a rabbit on crack.
There's a story that Billy Gibbons, one of the guys from ZZ Top, he tells he met B.B. King, and he's like, B.B., how do you get that crunchy blues sound so good with these really light strings? On this guitar, you just have really tiny light gauge strings. And Billy was under the impression you had to have big, heavy strings, to get that sound. And BB's like, you can get there with both. I just ask you this, why are you working so hard? Like trying to move these big cables,
Right.
And that's that experience. And it's the same thing. Look, it's the same thing in podcasting. It's the same thing. And everybody on the show has heard me say this, but it's sort of the Vin Scully school of things where you just sit back and just let the silence ask the question. Let the silence fill the gap. Let the silence create tension. And that's part of that. I say this all the time to people that try to get into podcasting. You got to learn to slow down. And I don't just mean speak more slowly. Like, why would you ever say the word if you've got a microphone in front of your face and something important to say?
Right. That's why I think Dave Chappelle is truly like this generation's John Coltrane or Miles Davis. Pick one.
Right.
There's just such a calm and a cool and a confidence that exudes from him in such a way where you could just clearly tell this dude is a master. He's a master at what he does. And listen, comedy, there's a lot of different styles. That's one of the other beauties of comedy. You know, you don't have to be a Dave Chappelle. You can be as frenetic or as insanely paced as a Bobcat Goldthwait or as the deadpan as a what's that guy's
Stephen
name?
Wright?
He's the king of deadpan. Stephen Wright.
Yeah.
You and be just as effective. But when you can just get the sense and the vibe that this person knows what they're doing and they're in complete control versus a guy who you could go, he's trying too hard. You could see it. It's night and day.
In the last 24 hours, talking kind of about the PC thing and the culture of canceling and everything, Jim Gaffigan put his feelings up on Donald Trump as president. And the point isn't that. I don't want to get into that necessarily. But what I want to ask is there a line? Look, you guys are supposed to, if you're that kind of comedian, keep us on our toes, challenge our beliefs, make us uncomfortable with where reality is. But is there a difference between being political and commenting on politics? And then when you cross over, does it really create a problem, or is that really Jim's job, do you think? And I'm not being critical of Jim. I'm just asking, being political versus commenting on politics.
I think as long as whatever you say, there's a laugh behind it that follows, then you're doing what you're supposed to do as a comedian. At the end of the day, the job is to be funny, period.
Mm-hmm.
How you get there or what you use to get there, that's on you. You know, listen, it's all subjective. I personally don't think Carrot Top is funny. I would never pay a dime to see him. But his job is to make people laugh. And he does that. So you have to tip your hat to him for doing his job. He's doing what he's supposed to do, even though it ain't my cup of tea. I envy Bill Maher. I wish I was that politically savvy. I think doing political comedy is one of the hardest things to do. I dabble in it a pinch, but I'm nowhere near. I could never do a whole hour and a half of straight political comedy. That's a hard thing to do, man. He makes algebra sexy. So, you know, hats off to him.
Yeah. Who's the guy? Mark, he plays the piano and does, or maybe Mark Russell, is that his name? You know what I'm talking about? And like he plays the piano when he does jokes. That's instead of having a guitar. I think that's his name. He did political.
Black or white?
White guy plays
black
the
or
piano.
White. Yeah, all the dudes I know that play piano and do jokes are black.
Okay.
So I've never heard of this guy.
You've seen him before. He was like always on PBS doing things, and just it's interesting that he used the piano.
You said PBS like it was ESPN.
he had a show.
He's on PBS.
Yeah, he's on PBS.
Yeah,
he's on channel 522. Don't you know that one?
Yeah, no. You lost me with PBS. I've only seen a couple of documentaries on PBS, racial documentaries, but other than that, no.
Yeah. Let me ask you about getting good too, because you know some comedians reach greatness, but they leave a lot of money on the table. And I'm thinking about like Greg Giraldo, Patrice. You know, these guys go way too soon. But then there's also comedians that are sort of like, this is my act, like AC/DC. AC/DC doesn't have to ever add another song to its set list. Everybody's going to go bonkers when they play their stadium full of people. Was Patrice still getting better? Was Greg Giraldo still getting better when we lost those guys?
Yeah, I think Greg Giraldo was one of the great writers of comedy, particularly during those roasts. And I know he worked really hard on Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn. He was a great comic. Patrice, who I think is undoubtedly one of the greatest comedians to ever live. Lord knows I keep studying his blueprint. And I think that had he lived, I'm going to take a line from Bill Burr. I think had he lived, every comic would be working for him. You know, he would have been the guy that was the go-to. His fearlessness, his edginess, his raw, his realness, And then he was just flat out funny. Some dudes are just edgy for the sake of being edgy, but somehow their funny don't match their edgy, or vice versa. They funny as hell, but couldn't be edgy if their life depended on it. Patrice did both without it seeming forced. It just seems so natural.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think he knew? I mean, obviously with type 2 and everything, you're not as healthy as you could be, but do you think he knew he was on borrowed time and maybe that inspired him for more greatness at an earlier age? Or was he just that great, you think?
No, I think he was just that great. But I do think he had some sense, some idea. I mean, when you listen to Patrice on some of those Opie and Anthony episodes, there were episodes where you could flat out feel his depression. Like he was just, he was going through it, man. And listen, this business will put you through it. If you can make it through show business sober completely, you're a hell of a human being, because this business will eat at your soul. It will eat at your mind and your spirit, and you will have bouts of depression, suicide. This is a cruel business, man. It's the weirdest business, because when it works for you, when it absolutely works for you, there is nothing better. I mean, it's just nothing better when it's hitting on all cylinders. But if it ain't working for you, oh boy, it is a molestation like you would not believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
This business treats me like I'm Dudley in the bicycle shop. I think you're old enough to get that reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you don't.
Yeah. Two things. One of them, we had Angelo Moore from Fishbone on the show, and that band does not give a fuck. They're going to do what they want to do. But he talked about the blender. It's the same industry, like you're going to get used and abused. And as long as you're selling things, they're going to work the fuck out of you with no regard for your well-being. And don't you dare say no. And then when they're not needing you, they don't give a fuck about you. So
yeah, Patrice had the greatest analogy when he compared. Well, he just basically said Hollywood is like the beast that eats you, and everyone is willing, because of what you can get in this business. Everybody is willing to wait in line to get eaten by the beast, and as soon as it shits you out, we get right back in line to get eaten again. But every now and then, the beast will get indigestion, and that was Charlie Sheen, where it fucks the machine up. Again, man, this is a weird thing, man. It really is.
Why?
Well, I just, listen, at the end of the day, the right thing to say is no one does this for the money. We do it because we love the art form and the craft and the purity of being able to make people laugh and connect with them. But make no mistake about it, the money is right there too. The thought of the money is right there, because the fact that you could be on a hit TV show and on the low end make $40,000, $50,000 a week is insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the high end, like the Friends, $1 million an episode. Now imagine that times 22 episodes times 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can make $20 million for a movie plus 10% of a back end. You get laid. You get people adore you. The Oscars give out gift bags, and certain shows that you go on to give out gift bags. Now, obviously, the bigger the show, the better the bag. I've done shows where the gift bag wasn't but a couple, $1,000. Pretty cool shit. The Oscars, I think the gift bag is like 50-something thousand, and it's like all these celebrities can afford everything, but they don't have to buy anything because they're given everything. The notion of that is absurd.
It is absurd. And then if you're getting paid $40,000 a week, the guy that is the executive producer, he's 10 times that. Like when Charlie Sheen's like, I want more money. There's more money there, man. None of those guys above Charlie Sheen in the paying order. None of those guys are going broke with that show.
Listen, if Netflix can pay Dave Chappelle $60 million, how much are they making? That's how insane that is.
Yeah. Or Spotify paying Rogan $100 million for that on that contract.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, that's why it's like, again, I'm not doing the podcast because my goal is to go, I want to get 100 million. It's always nice to aim high, but the chances of that happening obviously are minuscule.
Right.
And again, that's not the driving force.
Sure.
The driving force is to put out the best work you can put out. But you're also thinking in the back of your head, if I can put out the best work possible and get enough people to gravitate towards my product, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows, right? The good news is that for the most part, you don't need somebody above you to help you do that. Like, yeah, you need iTunes to put your stuff out, and you need, maybe Spotify as a place, but you don't need those guys. That, Spotify and Joe worked out a deal that was beneficial enough for Joe to say, yeah, let's do it. But you, in reality, can just say, pay me, and put a button on your page, and people can just pay you, and you could be the king of your own little fiefdom.
I recently saw a clip on Instagram, and I've seen these memes. I follow all these memes about wealth and financial literacy and business and rich shit. And I've seen some of the same memes over and over that basically say, if you know what you're doing and if you do it right, you can become ridiculously rich off this internet hustle. So I hate to say it, like repeat myself, but that's not the driving force.
Right.
But it's on my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah. Same, by the way. Same. Because I go out, we've got this show. I mean, 90 countries we've got active audience members, but we're all still trying to carry this rock up this goddamn hill. And where you're at, where I'm at, we're both way up there. Like when I run the numbers on this show, we're in the first percentile. It is hard to be better than our show, but it gets really steep. It gets really steep, and
oh yeah.
It's hard. And so like you said earlier, about diluting things, it's great if you're better, but I watch shows with famous people and I'm like, that show is garbage. Like, it's just, yeah.
Listen, man, I it's a head scratcher. And so much of what we talk about on the podcast is real life stuff that you go through, stuff that is just flat out unfair, unexplainable, and just trying to make sense of all of this is insane, because you want to live in a world where you think logically and you think in terms of what makes sense, and you want to think in simple math. All right, if I do X plus Z, I'm going to get, and sometimes it works out that way, and then sometimes you see shit where you go, that's what the public likes? Like this shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. When you see some of this stuff, I mean, and God bless if you figure the formula out and it's working, and as long as you're okay with what you're doing and you're not hurting anybody, whatever.
I want to believe that I'm okay with what I'm doing. I want to believe in my process, which in terms is all, based on my belief and my confidence in my ability, my talent, what I can do. Because again, I don't want to come off vain, but I think when you know my body of work, when you see what I've done and what I can do, I don't know of a better product to push than my own. But then I look on YouTube and I see some of these 15-minute sensations who get these ridiculous financial deals based off of the bullshit they do. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready to sell my soul. What's the going rate on a soul?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like these reaction videos to a song, like reaction to Rush. And they're like, ooh. And then they talk about it like, where the fuck have you been? Like, Rush has been around for 50 fucking years.
Right.
By the way, I make these things every time, and I'm still adapting to the tent studio. So I put your name on my marquee, and it'll be behind me as soon as I figure out. But I just wanted to make sure I shared that with you. Hey, so
nice.
In terms of being good, you said you look at Patrice and his blueprint. What have you discovered from watching that?
The same thing that is in Richard Pryor's blueprint, Dave Chappelle's blueprint, Chris Rock, Bill Burr. They all have the same blueprint. And I'm cut from that cloth. I'm old school. I really can't. I've had people say to me, well, in these sensitive cancer culture times, do you ever change your material? Do you ever bend? Do you ever fold? Do you ever match the climate of what's going on. And I go, listen, man, I'm a 80s baby. I was born in 75. You know, Richard Pryor wasn't my generation. He was my father's generation, but he was my introduction and my teachings into comedy. He's the professor. He's the master. But I grew up with Eddie Murphy and all the people that came along after him and with him. Chris Rock, Dave, Patrice. So I'm real Floridian with my comedy. I stand my ground, man. I just can't do it. And I know that in some ways that might make me a dinosaur. And I'm really hoping that, you know, I don't know, maybe in some ways it's kind of kept me from being where I should be or where I would like to be. But I believe in my product. So it may take me longer to get there, but as long as I get there, I can live with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can appreciate that.
I don't think I could look myself in the mirror and be happy knowing, you know, I'm dancing a jig and I'm doing jazz hands or I'm doing a bunch of shit that really ain't me at heart just to do what? You know, appease people that, you know, are too sensitive.
Yeah.
Or to try to, again, make that buck. You know, I got to go back to the main. Don't worry about the money. Worry about the vision. The money will come when you support the vision.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, again, I'm not in any rush to go, oh, I got to do what everybody else is doing or be sensitive because, you know, I don't buy into that.
And, you know, you've been around. By the way, you can tell you're good because you get asked to do cool shit, be on this show or do whatever it is. You don't get to do that unless you are doing things and where you're at. And it's been this way for a while for you, I'm sure. You know what your voice is. You don't need to change it. You can polish it up. You can maybe put some new bells and whistles on your voice, but your voice is your voice. And I don't think people want you to be like people don't go see Louis C.K. to be comfortable with his comedy. You know, the people that love his shit,
right?
They want to fucking squirm. He's like a horror show. And I don't know how to describe it better than this, but he makes you go, oh, God. Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it. People don't go see Louis C.K. to be comfortable with his comedy. You know, the people that love his shit,
right?
They want to fucking squirm. He's like a horror show. And I don't know how to describe it better than this, but he makes you go, oh, God damn, that's fucking funny. But you don't like it. You know, you got to move, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It would certainly make things easier if it's hard because all the real fans, all the diehard fans, all the true comedy lovers will say what you just said. Man, don't ever change. Be who you are. Don't ever change. The hard part about that is the people that sign your checks aren't them.
Yeah.
The people that decide whether or not you get put in a movie or on a TV show ain't them. They don't think like them. And you're trying to fight this balance between being true to yourself and having to pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
How far are you willing to go?
Yeah.
How much can you really sacrifice before you start going, oh, shit, I guess it's time to put on them tap shoes.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's tough.
And all artists have to make this decision. I mean, they don't have to take that path. You know, Prince could do whatever the fuck he wanted to do, but there's plenty of musicians, actors who take a gig because I'm going to get paid. And yeah, I don't care if this movie's, you know, a standout, but the next movie or the movie after that, or, you know, whatever. You and Vlad talked about Eddie Murphy being on Saturday Night Live. He's a brand. He's not a comedian anymore. He's a guy who used to be a comedian.
Yeah.
And it's not that he's not funny, but look, he gets paid Disney money to do voiceover work. He's not going to fuck around with that. You know, like that's good living.
Well, I also think that that's an age thing too. I mean, he's at this point in his life, age-wise, he can't be Foley anymore. He can't be that version of Axel Foley.
Right.
And I know that they flirted around with the idea of him doing a Beverly Hills Cop 4, but I'd be curious to see that if he's not that version of Axel Foley, which is the character, are we going to accept a mature, older Axel Foley?
Yeah.
Axel Foley is Axel Foley for a reason. And that movie, that character is a brand. So don't fuck with the formula, you know, either find a different vehicle or something like that. But don't change the ingredients to the Coke, man.
What if they did?
We like the Coca-Cola the way it is.
Right. And what if they did another 48 hours, and Eddie Murphy, he wouldn't be the guy he was in the first one. He'd have to be Nick Nolte, really, and be like, listen, you dumb fuck.
I don't think Nick Nolte could. I don't know if Nick Nolte would be here for another 48 hours.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm just like, if you had Eddie, he'd have to slide up into that more fatherly role and and tell the young buck, knock that shit off, or lady, young thug-ass or thug,
Yeah. There's something to be said for knowing when to let it go. And I don't think they should try to breathe life back into either one of those franchises. It's like, Harrison Ford is doing one more Indiana Jones. I love me some Indiana Jones. I grew up on Indiana Jones.
Yes.
I'm an 80s baby.
Yes.
But it's time.
It's time. It's been time.
It's been time.
Yeah. Yeah, that last one with the crystal skulls, and he was all old man running around, and it's like, oh no, please stop. And then Shia LaBeouf wasn't very good. He was so phony. I don't believe that he's a bad guy. It just didn't work, and I'd like to pretend that one isn't part of the trilogy.
Right.
Okay, so look, COVID makes things tough. By the way, you are going to be in Indiana next weekend between the 11th and 14th doing shows. You guys check it out in the show notes. If you're in Indiana, go see some live shows. Good grief, man. We need to get out there and get back to doing this. And for sure, check out Spears Steinberg podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. They'll be out there. But
and just, if I may,
please,
I always tell people the podcast is available on all streaming platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Anchor. But to make things easy, just hit me up in my Instagram under Aries Spears, blue check mark verification, and I'll send you the link personally.
Yeah, I love it. What is your preferred venue? I'm using the link you guys provided, but where do you want folks to? Because there's folks that listen already on your platform. So where do you want them to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most widely used platform is Apple. But, Spotify is right there, too.
Yeah. Just give these guys a spin. I mean, you're going to like it. I was listening, and here's a good sign, all right? Because I do a lot of production on other people's podcasts. If I forget that I'm listening to a show like a mechanic, like I'm doing prep, you got a good show. And it took me just a few minutes, and I'm like, oh, shit, that's right. I'm actually working.
Listen, man, not to really brag, but again, this is what I take pride in. And this isn't just me saying this. This is people that have written into the show and go, you guys seem like you have real conversation that's not scripted. And you talk about things that are very uncomfortable. Listen, we talk about race a lot. Mm-hmm. We talk about transgenders, homosexuality, all the hot button issues. But we talk about it from an honest and real perspective and try to make it as much as we can funny. I recently watched the great documentary on HBO, Youssef, Storm Over Brooklyn. And it was about the Youssef Hawkins murder back in the 80s when racism was at a sweltering boiling point between the Italian and the black community. It's one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. So to be able to talk about that and tastefully inject humor where you can, that type of stuff is intriguing to me. I think a lot of people prefer that kind of honesty. It's, again, especially in the climate that we live in now. It's like a rarity. People want some of that. Yeah. So we try to give it to them in a heavy dose.
Yeah, man. I that's a lot of what we do here. I don't mind bringing, like, if you sample my show, you should pretty quickly go, oh, look, there's someone from the left. Oh, there's someone from the right. There's someone that paints. There's someone that sings. You should see me specifically moving things around, and we'll talk about racial things. And it's hard, and I ask questions that are pretty hard, like just in general, when you talk about these things, like, nothing's fucking simple, man. Shit is complicated no matter where you're at, and if we all spent more time getting along and being more tolerant, it would be hard, but the world will be a better place. We're a little bit too. But
I think if we also were, from a comedic standpoint, if we were as open and honest about what we all say behind closed doors and what we all really feel, again, without it being hate rhetoric or promoting any kind of violence. There's some fun in that, man. There just really is. And I often in my podcast, I say the school of Patrice, which anytime I make a reference to some of the things he's done, I'll say that first, because I feel like there were so many moments where he taught you things in interviews and in stand-up. When you're on the road as a comic and you got a lot of time on your hands, you're sitting in the hotel rooms for long stretches before your shows, you listen to shit. And one of my favorite things to do to, make up for time was to listen to Patrice O'Neal on Opie and Anthony. And him and Anthony would have the most hilarious, heated racial conversations where you could easily say from listening to this,
Yeah.
both these motherfuckers is racist, but you could tell they both will go out and have a burger together. Like, this ain't just for the show. These motherfuckers feel how they feel.
Yeah.
But you don't get the sense that they're trying to kill each other. It's like, okay, Patrice said what he said, Anthony said what he said, but you could buy that these dudes would have a beer together.
When I have all these different people on, one of the things I've realized is that when you bring race in as a primary factor in a problem, it tends to rot out the rest of the problem. Like you can't, like whatever, like Black Lives Matter, right? You can say Black Lives Matter and you can point at cops and say, here's the problem. But damn, every night someone gets shot in Vallejo and it's not a cop shooting, it's a black guy shooting a black guy. And I'm not trying to make any kind of big statement. What I'm saying is that when we start with race, we eliminate a lot of other possibilities for these problems. Why do we love, in particular, black and white racial conflict when a nation full of people of all kinds of colors, all kinds of sexualities? I mean, look, this is the one country in the world where you can be completely disabled, and if you want to work, goddamn, go do it. We're behind you 100%. Why do we get so caught up in black and white race over everything else, at least right now?
Because it's woven into America's fabric. This country bleeds racism. This country was founded on racism. The Star Spangled Banner, the song that we all, stand up to and put our hands over our hearts and say some of the words, I believe there was some racial, it was either written by a racist or there's some racial context within that song. And this is what we celebrate. And so, in all flat out honesty, racism is as American and traditional as baseball and apple pie.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
But is it a problem for other races? Is it a problem for Hispanics, for Indians, for Asians?
You know the answer to that. All you got to do is look on social media.
Yeah.
Before social media, it's always been there. But now social media is literally the television in your hand that you travel with.
Yeah.
So, back in the day, you had to go home to watch TV. You had to go home and turn on the news to see what was going on. You had to go actually buy a newspaper, buy a magazine. Now it's all in your phone, in your pocket. So, and that's a good and bad thing.
I was just about to ask you, I'm about to say, we have access to all this information, all this storytelling, all this wonderful stuff. Any song ever created, ever, and it can be in your hand in a moment. But are we any wiser? Are we less wise than previous generations?
I think yes and no. I always hate to sound like old man on the porch. My generation was the best.
Yeah.
But I really do believe that. I mean, I came up with Whitney Houston. I came up with Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, Prince, Duran Duran. Name me today what singer outdoes Prince. Name me today what singer outdoes Michael Jackson. Name me what basketball player outdoes Michael Jordan. No, LeBron James. Name me what singers outsing Whitney Houston. I think the only thing this generation truly has made better is technology, is the fact that, and again, I think that's a blessing and a curse. But I definitely think technology, these kids have come in and have been ushered in at the same time as technology has gotten better. I'll tip my hat to them for that. But other than that, I think some of the old school things that we used to do, we should still be doing. I miss getting my porn in a place where I could be looked at and judged.
We used to have, I lived on the edge of town, and it was like just a green belt, a standard California rolling hills. And there was someone older than me built a lean-to, and I mean a fucking lean-to, and there was porn in that motherfucker. Right. And I go down, look at Cherry and We, and all those second-rate magazines. Oh man, and it was something magical about that.
There was a rush. There was a rush knowing that you were buying 15 magazines and so much porn that it seemed like a felony. There was a rush to that.
Yeah. By the way, I have a good way to sort out the answer on the LeBron and Michael thing. And here's the answer. If you want to know if LeBron is better than Michael Jordan, all you got to do is put Dennis Rodman on him. Dennis Rodman would drive LeBron James crazy and likely get LeBron to tee himself up and would absolutely shut him down in a lot of aspects of the game.
As a real dude, as a beer drinking, Charles Bronson movie watching, cigar smoking, eating hot wings off my naked chest dude, I think that last 10 documentary, it was better in sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a man's treat.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm a Michael Jordan groupie, man. I'm a fanatic, but I got tired of seeing Sometimes I Dream, the safe Hanes commercial, McDonald's Michael. To see him in a light that I had always suspected he was like, cursing, drinking, smoking.
Yes.
How could you not love that, man?
Yeah. No, and again, this goes to the whole GOAT conversation. If Michael Jordan wasn't motivated, all you had to do was look at him wrong, and he would invent that shit, be like, did you just say you were better than me? And then he would purposely go out and fuck you up. LeBron cannot do that.
Yes.
No.
Do
you remember when Rodman broke Malone's brain in the finals, and Karl Malone was stoic. That guy just did his job and was awesome. And Rodman drove him crazy. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way that LeBron is as mentally tough and demanding of himself and of his teammates as Michael is. There's no way.
Listen, that's why I always get into these arguments with these young kids today who always want to use the bigger, stronger, faster argument. It's like bigger, stronger, faster means nothing unless you have that thing beating in your chest and the mindset to be a killer. Was Michael bigger, stronger, faster than LeBron? No, but he was a killer.
Yeah.
And it showed on the basketball court.
Yeah.
I know people for all those diehard sports fanatics like to say, well, LeBron never lost in the first round. All right, apples and oranges. Michael lost in the first round, but he's 6-0 in the finals.
Yeah.
And I have to pose this question to you as a man. Would you rather have an enormous dick that works sometimes, 3-6, or an average dick that works all the time, 6-0?
Give me that singer sower. Just bing, 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 in and out. I don't mean it could be smaller. I got a tongue.
There you go.
I'll put that shit to work. Yeah.
There you go.
If you had to stay alive by a guy winning Game 7, I don't need LeBron James with the ball. Matter of fact, those guys I would pick above LeBron James. Michael would be the guy. And then probably Kobe.
Listen, I don't even, for as much praise as that Golden State Warriors team with Kevin Durant got. Honestly, I don't see them beating the Magic Kareem Lakers, the Shaq Penny Magic, any of the Bulls teams from the 90s, the Detroit Bad Boys, the Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Larry Bird, Celtics. I don't see them beating none of them teams.
No, I think you're right.
They were cut from a different cloth.
And it was a different time, and it was a harder game. Just because you can run fast. I mean, there's teams that could run. Those Lakers teams ran well. How about those Celtics teams? That front line, you had real problems because you weren't going to shut off.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Yeah. And they could control the tempo by slowing it down even more, and then go ahead.
Yeah. This era is so moist, man. A lot of moisture in this era.
It's moist. And then what about the eras before us? Like, what about, Bill Russell? He's got one for each finger, one for the dick. You got Wilt Chamberlain, who made them change all of the rules. But are those guys too prehistoric? Has the game evolved too much? Or if Wilt came out now?
Well, I know one of the arguments has been, well, what defines greatness? If it's about championship rings, well, then Bill Russell beats Michael Jordan because he has 11. And I go, yeah, I get that, but there should be an asterisk. near Bill Russell. No fault to him, but he played in an era and in a time where there was only 3 Negroes in the whole league, and he was one of them. And he was a giant amongst midgets. Yeah. Come on, man. Yeah, of course he won 11 in a row. There's no way Bill Russell wins 11 in a row playing against guys like Akeem Olajuwon, Shaq, Kareem, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson. And that was a different time.
I guess the argument goes the other direction too, though, in the benefit of the Warriors. You know, in that time, your dad might be like, you're not playing some goddamn ball game. Go get a job and grab a wrench and get to work. And that kid who might have been great doesn't even get a chance to play because there's no scholarship. Now it's like the special camps all year round, basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is. And so the cream is more likely to be found and developed into something even better when they get there.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
With that said, though, Wilt had to play against his peers, and he whooped them so bad they changed the size of the key, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of the greats, but I think in terms of overall impact, statistics, championships, MJ is the GOAT, no doubt. Taking the game to a global level. You know, again, people will say, I've heard people throw out Kareem.
Yeah.
Okay. Kareem won as many titles, number 1 scorer. Yeah, but Kareem didn't take the game global. His impact wasn't as big as Michael's. And part of that was his fault because, you know, he was aloof. He was, you know, he wasn't very personable. He didn't like the media. He didn't talk to him. Michael had that great smile, handsome, sexy, crossover. When the camera was on him, he lit up. He was everything the NBA needed.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. I just one time real quick, I want to go through these things. You're going to be playing in Indianapolis. The scrolling across the bottom has the dates. The Helium Comedy Club, September 11th and 14th. You guys should go check that out. Tickets, the number's going across the bottom. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes and we'll get this out. Before then, if you're on the podcast side, just look in the show notes, all that stuff. All my Indiana people, get out there and support Aries as
actually is, Aries. There you go.
I had as coming. I'm like Aries as he's live in Indianapolis. And in general, please get out when possible and safely do so, and support folks that are trying to get us back to the new normal as we try to get back to work. I mean, we need musicians and roadies and all these people who are right now like building houses. We need them on the road putting on shows because. Just get out of the house as safe as you can, as often as you can.
Yeah, and listen, I know, obviously, because of this COVID climate that we're in, we all want to be safe. And by all means, I would never encourage people to do something that doesn't make them feel comfortable or not feel safe.
Of course.
Because I've done shows, and it's just weird looking at people wear masks as they're supposed to be grinning and laughing. Because what we do is a very intimate exercise, and it's an exchange. You know, it's I give you, you give me. And at the end of the day, I just prefer condomless comedy. You know, I want to see your teeth. I want to feel your face. Mm-hmm. We all know sex with a condom is still good, but it ain't as good. Right. So snatch it off and we're going to catch what we're going to catch.
I like it. And then again, make sure everybody checks out Spears Steinberg podcast on Apple Podcast. Again, links will be in the show notes. And man, look, seriously, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see the next thing, whether it's, you know, a new show, a new back when they start making TV shows again, or, you know, a comedy special, whatever it is, man. I love where you're at. I love it.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, brother. And if you happen to, I'm not an overly religious person, and the more and more I go through this life, I think I'm becoming more and less that person. But if you happen to be on hold calling into God, tell them click over. I'm on the other line.
Yeah, click over. And then let's try to get you, me, and Jay in the same room and throw down a pod together.
I would love hilarious. That, man. And if you talk to him before I do, please tell him I love him, and I would love to do his podcast again.
Yes.
Because it was the most honest, open, fun conversation I've ever had. I had a blast, man.
Right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you so much, everybody. This is our man, Aries Spears, and I hope you guys all know to support him out there in Indiana and wherever he is on the road. Just go to his website. All that stuff will be in the show notes. Go check it out. Support my man, and thank you again. I appreciate you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me, brother. Spears and Steinberg podcast. Hit me up on Instagram for the links. God bless you, man, and thank you for having me.